She read the contract everyone else signed off on, then said one sentence that stopped a billion-dollar deal cold. It smelled like money. Not the kind in your pocket, the kind that moves quietly in boardrooms, across glossy tables, under the weight of signature pens. The kind that doesn't blink when $10 million changes hands, because it's aiming for $10 billion. That's where Janelle Thornton found herself. She sat at the far end of a long conference table on the 31st floor of a building that loomed over downtown St. Paul, Minnesota. Frost clung to the corners of the glass windows, the kind of cold that bites through gloves, but the heat inside was almost stifling, not because of the temperature, but because of the tension, the energy, the eyes. 12 men, 3 women, all in tailored suits and silk ties, except her. She wore a charcoal gray dress with a modest neckline and practical heels. Her notebook was open, pen uncapped, post-it notes lined like soldiers on the edge of her laptop. Nobody really looked at her. They called her into this meeting as a formality, legal support, not a decision maker, not a shaker, not a breaker. She didn't mind, not usually. Across from her, Preston Velman laughed a little too loud at his own joke. The CEO of Halverson and Drake Ventures. Tall, tan, like someone who never forgot to get a weekly haircut. He had a reputation, fearless, charming, cutthroat. He was the kind of man who ordered wine for the table without asking, the kind who took silence as a yes, the kind who used people like ladders and didn't always check if they broke beneath him. The deal on the table today? An acquisition of a digital infrastructure company based in Dallas. Big money, big risks. Everyone was all smiles until they weren't. "We're on track," said Mark Eisen, VP of Finance, tapping the screen where a slideshow glowed against the wall. "Our due diligence came back clean. The final drafts locked in, just signatures left." Janelle didn't say anything. Yet. She watched the room, watched how the smiles weren't just pride, they were hunger. She'd seen it before in law school at the University of Iowa. Some people wore it like a scent they couldn't wash off. It was only when Preston reached for his Mont Blanc pen that she opened the folder on her lap, quietly, deliberately. Her eyes skimmed the pages. Her job wasn't to redline anymore. They had whole teams for that. But she liked knowing what her name was attached to. And this deal? This one had claws. She turned the page, then turned it again, and then she stopped. Paragraph 11.3, indemnity for undisclosed liabilities. She blinked, read it again, and her stomach dropped. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was sharp. A small, almost hidden clause. A single sentence that, if triggered, could shift the weight of any hidden debts, lawsuits, or breaches, right onto Halverson and Drake's shoulders, into the billions. Her fingers clenched the page a little tighter. Her pen hovered above her notes. She looked up. Nobody noticed. Then she spoke, not loud, but clear. "Excuse me." They kept talking. She said it again, louder this time. "Excuse me, but this clause is a trap." The room froze. Preston stopped mid-signature. "What?" he said, brow lifting, like he hadn't heard her right, or didn't believe what he did hear. Janelle tapped the page in front of her. "Paragraph 11.3, she said. "The indemnity section. It's structured in a way that we'd assume full liability for any undisclosed issues after the deal closes. That's not standard. That's dangerous." Silence. Mark Eisen leaned forward. "We reviewed that." "I know," she replied. "And with respect, I think you missed something." The woman sitting next to her, Angela from legal counsel, shifted in her seat. One of the marketing execs coughed into his fist. Preston put down his pen, slowly. His smile didn't just fade, it collapsed. "You're saying this whole thing could backfire?" he asked. Janelle looked him square in the eye. "I'm saying, if we sign this as is, and there's a hidden lawsuit or unpaid debt waiting to surface, we eat the fallout. All of it." She didn't blink, not once. The air changed. The confidence in the room was still there, but now it was laced with something else, uncertainty. Janelle didn't come here to make enemies, but she wasn't about to let a billion-dollar mistake happen because nobody wanted to read the fine print. But before anyone could respond, Mark leaned back with a smirk and said something that shifted the room again. Mark Eisen folded his arms across his chest and raised an eyebrow. "Well," he said, voice smooth but tinged with condescension, That's quite the interpretation. Janelle tilted her head slightly. It's not an interpretation. It's right there in the language. If we assume liability for any undisclosed issues, and they've failed to list outstanding debt or pending litigation, we're holding the bag. No way to claw that back after closing. Angela, from the legal team, leaned forward now, brow furrowed. Wait, show me what you're looking at. Janelle turned her folder around and slid it across the table. Angela scanned the clause, blinking twice. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. Then Preston cut in, voice just a notch sharper. Why wasn't this flagged earlier? Angela looked up, caught like a deer in headlights. It was buried in a cross-reference. You wouldn't spot it unless you were comparing the third draft with the final. And that was exactly what Janelle had done last night. She couldn't sleep. Something about the timeline of the acquisition didn't sit right. It was moving too fast. The seller's side pushing hard. Emails coming in at 1 a.m. Lawyers eager to wrap things up before the end of the quarter. She'd seen that pattern before, so she stayed late, cross-checked every clause, side by side, highlighted anything that smelled off. And that sentence, just 27 words, had felt like a loaded gun, safety off, pointed directly at her company. Mark exhaled through his nose. Even if it's risky, the upside outweighs it. We're getting them for pennies on the dollar. Janelle shook her head. It's only pennies if there's not $100 million lawsuit waiting around the corner. And if there is, we won't just lose money. We'll lose trust, credibility, maybe our valuation. Preston stood now, hands in his pockets, pacing slowly. What do you suggest? He asked. Not sarcastic, not kind either, neutral. But the room could feel the weight behind it. Janelle didn't flinch. Escrow, renegotiate the clause, put protections in place, and delay signing until we get confirmation there are no legal liabilities being concealed. Preston stopped pacing, looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You know how much we've already spent in man-hours alone on this deal? I do, she said, but that's nothing compared to what we'll spend trying to clean it up if it goes bad. Mark scoffed. Oh, come on, he muttered. She's a paralegal. Janelle blinked once, slowly, then looked right at him. And yet I'm the only one in this room who caught it. Mark's jaw clenched, but he didn't respond. Angela finally spoke. She's right. 3 words. They hit harder than anything Janelle had said, because they came from someone inside the circle. Preston turned back to the screen, then the contract, then Janelle. You got this backed up? He asked. I have a copy on the drive, and I flagged 3 other discrepancies while I was at it. He stared at her for a long second. The room was dead silent. Fine, he said finally. Nobody signs anything until I hear back from my legal aid. Give me 20 minutes. He left the room, and suddenly everyone else did too, one by one, some out of discomfort, some pretending they had calls. A few stayed behind, whispering near the windows. Janelle stayed seated. Angela leaned over, her voice low. You're gonna have a target on your back now. Janelle gave a small smile. I had one before I walked in. But she knew none of this was over yet. 20 minutes could change everything, and she had no idea which direction that change was coming from. Preston's office door shut with a soft click. The conference room sat in awkward silence for a few seconds, like a balloon deflating. No one looked directly at Janelle. No one said thank you, no nod of acknowledgement, just the quiet rustle of papers and chairs scooting back. Angela gave her a tight glance and walked out without a word. 2 mid-level executives, Rodrigo Cortez from Strategic Ops and Brittany Hayes from Communications, stood by the window, whispering under their breath. Rodrigo side-eyed Janelle like she had just coughed during a prayer. Brittany, always perfect with her words, chose silence. Then Mark spoke again, low, direct, disrespectful. Who does she think she is? He didn't say it to her, but he didn't hide it either. Janelle didn't move. She didn't blink. She just clicked her pen closed and slowly packed up her folder. Excuse me, she asked. Mark looked straight at her now. I said, he repeated louder, who do you think you are exactly? You've been sitting in on these meetings for what, 3 months? You're not senior counsel. You don't lead negotiations. And you sure as hell don't stop deals from closing. She stood up slowly, hand resting on the back of her chair. I don't need to lead negotiations to recognize a landmine, she said calmly. I did my job. I caught what your team didn't. You're welcome. Rodrigo chuckled under his breath. You know, pulling a stunt like that in front of Preston isn't going to win you anything. Janelle stepped out from behind the chair. I'm not trying to win anything, she replied. I'm trying to make sure this company doesn't walk into a disaster, but maybe that's not your priority. He raised his eyebrows, surprised, and just like that, she left the room. The hallway was cooler, quieter, but her pulse was still pounding, not out of fear, but out of memory. She'd been here before, not in this building, but in moments like this. Back at the law firm where she interned during her last year of school in Cincinnati, Ohio, she found an error in a contract going out to a Fortune 500 client. She flagged it, brought it to the attention of a junior partner. He took the correction, erased her name from the email chain, and presented it as his own. She never got credit. In fact, when review season came, she was called unassertive. Another time, she'd corrected a senior associate in front of a client. She didn't mean to. It just happened. The next day, she was reassigned to internal research tasks. It wasn't new. It never got easier. But she got sharper. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to protect herself, her name, her work. She walked down the hall to the staff kitchen, needing a few deep breaths before the next round began. She poured herself some stale office coffee and stood near the window, watching snow begin to drift sideways across the city below. A familiar voice broke her thoughts. I didn't catch it either, said someone from behind her. She turned. It was Brittany. Janelle raised an eyebrow, waiting. Brittany shrugged. The clause. I skimmed it. I've seen that language 100 times. Never noticed how slanted it really was until you pointed it out. Janelle nodded once. That's how they write it. Sounds fair until it's not. There was a pause. Then Brittany said, You probably just saved us a lawsuit. Janelle didn't respond right away. Or I just bought myself a reputation. Brittany gave her a strange look. You think speaking up will make them come for you? I don't think. I know. Brittany didn't deny it. I guess that's the risk you take when you actually care. There was another pause. Then Brittany added quietly, I'd rather have someone like you on my team than 5 Mark Eisens. Janelle turned back toward the window. She didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped just slightly. But before she could say anything else, her office phone buzzed. Preston was ready to talk. Alone. Janelle walked into Preston's office like it was a courtroom. Not a place for small talk, a place for stakes. The door shut behind her with that same soft click. Preston stood at the window, arms folded, not turning around. His posture didn't scream anger. It whispered calculation. He'd removed his blazer, and the sleeves of his dress shirt were rolled up just enough to let you know he didn't plan on this conversation being short. You caught everyone off guard, he said, still facing the window. I wasn't trying to, she replied. He turned slowly and gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. She did. He didn't. He walked behind the desk, but remained standing, eyes on the stack of contracts between them. His fingers tapped the edge of the paper, rhythmic and slow. My legal aid reviewed the clause, he said. Janelle kept her face still. You were right, he added. No apology, no gratitude, just facts. She nodded. I figured. He studied her now, really looked at her. How did you catch it? I compared version 3 to version 5. The clause was rewritten on a Friday night, slipped into the final revision. The seller's team buried it in a reference loop. Looks harmless unless you check the full chain. You were the only one who checked? Janelle shrugged lightly. I don't assume someone else did. I make sure. Preston stared at her for a long second, then sat. You embarrassed my team. I protected your company. That line landed. He leaned back, exhaled slowly. This deal is worth 9 figures. We've been working on it for 8 months. Everyone's hungry. You slowed down a machine we've been fueling for nearly a year. Machines that run too fast tend to crash. That made him chuckle. It wasn't warm. You know what people are saying? Janelle looked him dead in the eye. Do I care? He cracked the faintest smile. Fair enough. Then for the first time, he leaned forward. You've got instincts. Not just legal sense. Business sense. You see angles. You're methodical. Calculated. Calm. Those are rare traits. Janelle didn't respond. I've had analysts in this building for 5 years who wouldn't have caught that clause. So tell me, Janelle, what do you want? The question hung in the air like smoke. She was quiet, not because she didn't know the answer, but because it had taken her years to say it with full chest. Respect, she said finally. Credit. And the room. When it matters. Preston nodded. You'll get it. But not like this, she said. He tilted his head. Meaning? I'm not taking a title bump to senior paralegal. I'm not joining a committee. I don't want window dressing. If you really see what I bring, then use it right. Otherwise, I'll keep doing what I do until someone else values it. He studied her again, longer this time. No smile now. He opened a drawer, pulled out a red-marked copy of the acquisition contract. The seller's lawyer used to work at Macmillan Partners. So did I. He learned tricks from the best. Apparently, not all of them, Janelle replied. That made Preston laugh, for real this time. Okay, he said. We're pushing the deal a week. New round of review. You're going to sit in on it. Janelle raised an eyebrow. As what? As someone who clearly reads better than half my team. She didn't smile, but her posture shifted. Shoulders straighter, chin slightly higher. Preston stood up, smoothing the front of his shirt. Let's see what you do with that room you asked for. But before she could answer, Preston's assistant knocked twice on the door and opened it halfway. Another exec needed the CEO right away, and the moment passed. Preston left the office without another word. Janelle stayed seated for a moment, letting the silence settle. The chair beneath her felt firmer than before, like it belonged to her now, or maybe she finally claimed it. She gathered her notes and walked back to her desk. Heads turned as she passed, but no one said anything. Not yet. Not until they knew which way the wind would blow. At her workstation, she plugged in her laptop and opened the shared drive. Her flagged version of the contract was still up. Notes, highlights, margin comments, proof. Her inbox was swelling with messages now. From legal, from strategy, even from HR. But the one that stood out was from Preston. Subject line, your notes, impressive. That was it. No follow-up, no thanks, just acknowledgement. But it was enough for now. 20 minutes later, the war room reassembled. Same long table, same faces. But the energy had shifted. The overconfidence was gone. Now there was a quiet, taut sense of caution. Mark Eisen didn't say much this time. He barely looked at her. Angela slid into the seat next to Janelle this time instead of across from her. Preston entered last. No suit jacket, no small talk. All right, he said. Let's walk through this slowly. Janelle clicked her pen and looked up. I'll lead. You could have heard a paperclip hit the floor. She didn't ask. She didn't wait. She projected her screen to the wall and began walking the room through the risk exposures the clause introduced. Here, she said, highlighting a sentence in yellow. This looks like harmless liability coverage, but it omits specificity. It leaves room for the seller to withhold relevant financial history. If that history comes to light post-acquisition, we're cooked. Cooked how? Someone from the back asked. Let me put it plainly, Janelle said, turning. If they're hiding, say, a deferred debt settlement or pending civil action, like a class action, they're not obligated to disclose under this wording, but we are obligated to absorb any consequences. Angela nodded. She's not exaggerating. That clause, as written, makes us liable for the unknown, not just the known. Janelle turned to the room again. If someone sells you a house and doesn't tell you there's black mold in the walls, but you agree to fix anything the inspector missed, you're stuck with the bill. That's what this is. The team was listening now, not because they were being polite, because they were scared, and she had their full attention. Rodrigo raised a hand, this time respectfully. What do you suggest? Full redraft of the indemnity section. We limit our responsibility to disclosed issues only. Anything hidden, intentionally or not, falls back on them. And we demand escrow, minimum of 12 months, holding at least 20% of the deal value. Someone at the end of the table whistled under their breath. That's aggressive. No, Janelle replied. That's protection. Preston crossed his arms and looked around the table. Does anyone disagree? No one moved. He looked back at Janelle. Send your revised version to legal. I want it in their hands before QB. Janelle nodded. Meeting adjourned. As the others filed out, Angela tapped her shoulder. You just rewrote protocol, she said, almost like she couldn't believe it. We usually push stuff like this to outside counsel. Janelle unplugged her laptop. Maybe it's time we trust our in-house team more. Angela smiled faintly, or at least trust the people doing the reading. But back in her office, Janelle found something on her desk she hadn't expected. An unsigned, typed note with one line, "Watch your back." The note didn't have a name, no initials, just those 4 words, typed in plain black font on thick stock paper. Janelle stared at it for a long time. She turned it over. Nothing. No one had seen who left it, and the desk camera in this section had been under maintenance for weeks, a fact she had flagged twice. It felt less like a coincidence now. She slid the paper into her folder without a word. Threats, even subtle ones, weren't new, but they were never okay. And this one wasn't going to shake her. She had work to do. By late afternoon, the new indemnity clause had been reviewed, approved, and sent back to the seller's counsel. A reply came in quickly. Aggressive pushback, thinly veiled frustration, legal jargon used like a shield. They weren't expecting resistance, and definitely not from her. Preston's assistant buzzed again. "Mr. Vellman wants to see you." She walked in less cautiously this time. Preston stood near the corner window, phone in one hand, a half-drunk coffee in the other. He nodded at her and motioned toward the seat. "I have 5 minutes," he said, "so I'll make it quick." He sat behind his desk, leaned forward on his elbows. "I want to move you out of legal support." Janelle didn't react. "I want you working directly under me in M&A strategy. You'd shadow deals, not just check them. You'd be part of structuring, vetting, negotiating, full visibility." He waited for her response. She was quiet, thoughtful, then asked, "Why me?" Preston smirked. "Because you see the angles. You don't just read contracts. You read people, situations, timing. I can teach someone to model a deal. I can't teach them to see what you saw yesterday." She nodded once. "What's the title?" He blinked. "You care about the title?" "I care about how rooms get opened." He leaned back. "Associate Director of M&A Oversight." Janelle held his gaze. "That's not a real title." He smirked again. "You're negotiating already." "No," she said. "I'm asking for clarity. Because if I take this, and it's just a way to say you promoted the girl who caught the clause, I'm out in 6 months." His smile faded. This time, he respected it. "I'll have HR work on a proper role, a real one. You'll have autonomy, visibility, risk, reward." Janelle nodded. "Good." She stood up. Preston didn't. "One more thing." She paused. "I didn't see that clause either," he admitted, "and I've been doing this for 20 years. She looked at him, not with pride or smugness, but with something sharper. "That's the problem," she said, and walked out. Back at her desk, she started clearing out her folders. Her paralegal badge, her drawer full of highlighters, the backup coffee mug she never used. Angela passed by and leaned in. "Moving upstairs?" "Looks like it." Angela smiled. "They'll either love you or fear you." Janelle slid the last file into her tote bag. "They don't have to do either. They just have to respect me." But when she looked back at the folder with the threat note inside, she knew this promotion wasn't a victory. It was a warning shot. Janelle stepped into the elevator, badge clipped higher than usual on her blazer. Floor 35, executive level. The air even smelled different up here. Less like printer paper, more like polished wood and power. As the doors opened, her eyes scanned the floor. Fewer people, more glass, louder shoes on silent carpets. She passed a row of conference rooms with names like Summit and Titan. Every face she saw had the look of someone used to being listened to. She wasn't intimidated, just focused. Inside her new office, a corner one, smaller than Preston's but twice the size of her old cube, was a clean desk, a monitor, and a note on the keyboard. "Welcome to the deep end." She didn't need a welcome. What she needed was a moment to breathe. That came later, after hours, when the building thinned out and the buzz of email replies died down. She was making notes on a case file when she heard a knock. Light, unsure. It was Malaya, the new hire in administrative support. 24, just out of a state college in Toledo, Ohio, still finding her rhythm. She poked her head in like a kid trying not to wake a sleeping dog. "You busy?" she asked. Janelle smiled gently. "Only if you're bringing problems." Malaya stepped in, holding a notebook so tight her knuckles were pale. I, um, I saw what happened in the meeting yesterday, heard about it, and what you did. Janelle leaned back in her chair. What do you mean? The claws. The whole room was talking about it. Not loud, but, in the kitchen, in the elevator, can you believe she said that? She paused, nervous. Anyway, I just wanted to say, it meant a lot. Seeing someone say it out loud, not just think it or whisper it or joke about it after, but stop the whole room and say, this isn't right. Janelle looked at her fully. Malaya went on, voice lower now. Sometimes I wonder if I'm too quiet in meetings, like if I even belong in some of those rooms. And then I saw you, and I thought, maybe I just need to keep paying attention, keep reading, keep sharpening. Janelle nodded slowly. You don't need to be loud to be right. You just need to be clear and consistent. Malaya smiled at that. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you said it, when you called it out, were you scared? Janelle didn't answer right away. Then she said, no, not scared, just tired. Malaya tilted her head, tired of waiting for someone else to say it first, tired of having to be 5 steps ahead just to be taken seriously, tired of pretending the room isn't different when you walk into it. Malaya swallowed hard. But it's worth it, Janelle added, because now they have to think twice, not just about the claws, about you, about what happens when they underestimate someone who actually reads every word. Malaya gave a small laugh. Well, I hope I can be like that someday. Janelle stood, walked over, and handed her a small yellow sticky note. On it were 3 words. Ask, then check. That's how I started. Ask every question, then check it yourself. Don't wait for someone else to hand you the truth. Malaya took the note like it was a map. As she left, Janelle sat down again and stared out the window. The skyline blinked against the dark. Her reflection in the glass was clear now. Older than she felt some days. Sharper than most gave her credit for. And still here. No titles, no rumors, no threat notes would shake that. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do in a room full of power is tell the truth. And stay standing after. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be prepared. Speak up, even if your voice shakes. Especially when it costs you. Respect isn't given, it's earned, word by word, choice by choice. If this story made you think about your own voice, your place in the room, or how often you've stayed quiet, share it. Someone else is waiting to hear what you've been holding back.